Who's your commander?
Good luck.
Equip.
Move to combat.
Resolves.
Now, before you attack
Does
me,
anyone have an answer?
well played.
Good game.
Why, hello there, Commander players. I'm DJ, this is the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and we have more decks from Commander 2018. This time, it's led by Saheeli the Gifted. But Saheeli is not alone. Let's read Tawnos and Brutaclad first. Tawnos, Urza's apprentice, is blue and a red for a 1/3 legendary human artificer. Tawnos has haste, and for a blue and a red and a tap, you can copy target activated or triggered ability you control from an artifact source. You may choose new targets for the copy. I did an entire deck tech on Tawnos, so you can search that up or click on the link right here to find out how I interpreted Tawnos. It had a lot of activated and triggered abilities from artifacts, and you need to specially tune your deck for Tawnos, so I don't think it's great for just upgrading the pre-constructed deck anyways. Next we have Brutaclad, Telcor Engineer, 4 blue-red for a 4/4 legendary artificer. Creature tokens you control have haste. Nice little static ability. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 blue Mer artifact creature token. Then you may choose a token you control. If you do, each other token you control becomes a copy of that token. Brutaclad is amazing. You can flood your board with tons of different tokens and then get one beefy token and then suddenly you have an army of amazing tokens. And they stay that way and they have haste. Brutaclad's amazing, but you really need to build around it. If you're interested in a Brutaclad deck, I did a deck tech with Josh Lee Kwai from the Command Zone. We talked about Brutaclad in detail and it's really great, so you should check that out. So, with 3 commanders out of this deck, and 2 of them already have devoted deck techs, I guess I'm locked into talking about Saheeli the Gifted. 2 blue-red for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. +1 to create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. A second +1. The next spell you cast this turn costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control as you cast it. Very interesting. And then an ultimate -7, for each artifact you control, create a token that's a copy of it. Those tokens gain haste, exile those tokens at the beginning of the next end step. Saheeli the Gifted can be your commander. Well, we know that we're going to make a deck tech out of Saheeli, so let's find out how best to support her. The first thing, you need artifacts. She creates artifacts and synergizes with artifacts. That +1 of creating a servo, that's fine and all, but it's really the second +1 that she has. The next spell you cast this turn costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control as you cast it. That's amazing, that's a huge discount. In this deck we can regularly have 5 or 6 different artifacts on the battlefield. This makes your mana rocks even better. So Saheeli's just going to be a crazy artifact ramp deck, and we're going to want to be able to ramp into big spells. And so we're going to pay a lot of attention to the big spells that we can fit into this deck. Now, one thing that's really interesting is an artifact tension in this deck, where we're wanting to have really, really big spells, but we also want to have a critical mass of artifacts. And actually, we want to have a critical mass of low CMC artifacts, because we want to dump a lot of artifacts onto the board so that we get the most out of this +1 ability and then cast one huge thing. But that huge thing isn't always an artifact, so we have to get a good balance going on. I think that's going to be the trickiest part of building this deck. And the last thing we want to look at is the ultimate, because it's clearly good, but how good? Can we build around it? Is it something that we should be working towards? Those are a lot of questions, and we really shouldn't build a deck around a Planeswalker's ultimate, but when Saheeli only has +1s and one of them does a great job of defending her, maybe we have to keep the ultimate in the back of our mind. But the first thing I need to talk about is artifacts, really getting tons and tons of artifacts in this deck, because Saheeli's going to give us a huge mana reduction for all of them. One of the best inclusions we can have is artifact lands, because they tap for mana and they synergize with our Planeswalker. And if we want to go even better, even more ramp, Mox Opal, Mox Diamond, and Mana Crypt are also really, really good. Because these artifact lands, they take up a land drop, they tap for mana, and they synergize with our Planeswalker, but these Mox Opal, Mox Diamond, Mana Crypt, they also do all of those things, but they don't even take up a land drop. They're so good. The downside is that they're all like $100. And they don't make your deck that much more explosive. Trust me, you're going to get a lot of mana off of this commander. But really, when you can play a 0-drop artifact and then ramp out your commander early, and then that artifact also taps for multiple mana because it synergizes with Saheeli's Plus, they're just so good I need to really mention them, even though they're out of so many people's budget. But they're going to be overshadowed by all of the other mana rocks that we have in this deck. Mana Vault and Soul Ring are amazing. They're 1-drop artifacts, really powerful. But then also we want to focus on 2-drop artifacts because we want to be able to play it on 2 and then cast our commander on turn 3, activate Saheeli, and then maybe have another follow-up spell. Or I guess make a servo. But really we want to ramp into Saheeli and then have a follow-up. That'd be really, really great. And you do that by having 1 or 2-drop mana rocks. Mana Vault Soul Ring, great, but also Fellware Stone, Cold Steel Heart, Fire Diamond, Izzet Signet, Mind Stone, Thought Vessel. Oh, Grim Monolith is insane. All of these can be really powerful ramp. See, one thing that's really deceptive is that Artifact Ramp is already good in decks. And then Saheeli makes them able to ramp you even a little bit more with her +1. Just so good. There's 2 other pieces of Artifact Ramp that are even better. Astral Cornucopia can benefit from the cost reduction of Saheeli. We have a bunch of artifacts on the battlefield, and we plus Saheeli reducing the casting cost by 6 or 7, then suddenly we have an Astral Cornucopia that can ramp us even harder for the next turn. The same thing goes for Everflowing Chalice. The multi-kicker is affected by Saheeli's cost reduction. Not only are these 2 really powerful, they also point out something you should know. The X's and the multi-kicker are affected by Saheeli's cost reduction. That's an important thing to keep in mind as you're building so that you know what kind of options you have. Next up, I have some bigger mana ramp. Maybe these are some of the follow-up plays you can have after you play your Saheeli. Gilded Lotus, Blinkmoth Urn, Dreamstone Hedron. I particularly like Blinkmoth Urn because it comes in the pre-constructed deck. Very nice. And this gives us a tremendous amount of mana. I also like cards like Paradox Engine. With all of the mana rocks in this deck, you're going to be producing tons of mana when Paradox Engine is going off. And Brass's Bounty. I like creating a bunch more artifact tokens. This has lots of artifact synergies in it, and so Brass's Bounty can go really, really big. And speaking of really, really big, I finally have a deck to put Storm the Vault in. Storm the Vault is a crazy legendary enchantment that flips into an even crazier legendary land. Tap to add a blue to your mana pool for each artifact you control. We plan on controlling many, many artifacts. So so far all we've been talking about is ramp. What do we do with all of this ramp? Well, we can start controlling the board. Duplicant can remove a creature, Meteor Golem removes anything. Spine of Ishsaw is basically a Meteor Golem, but not as cool because it's not doing the superhero landing in lava. And Steel Hellkite is so flexible, and it can give us an outlet for all of this mana ramp. Not Saheeli's +1, but all of the mana rocks we have lying around. It's going to be really great to activate Steel Hellkite. That's just a little bit of utility. We plan on having a lot more, and along with the utility, we'll have cards like Sculpting Steel, Phyrexian Metamorph, and Mirage Mirror. These are so flexible they gives us tons of utility later on in the game. And then with all of these artifacts being cast, let's get some card draw going with Jhoira, Weatherlight Captain. And again, all of these artifacts being cast, let's double up the artifact count with Psymaster Thopterus and Efficient Construction. We could theoretically just run over our opponent with all of the card draw, all of the mana ramp, all of these Thopters, all of this value. But I know we're here for Saheeli's +1. The one where we just produce a bunch of mana. So what are we gonna do with all of this mana? Well, as we start moving up, we can talk about some 6-drops. Thopter Assembly. It's a fun card. and it can really add to that artifact count, making things get even crazier in the future. And then Soul of Nufrexia, it's just an efficient beater, but most importantly, it gives things indestructible, which is really strong because we're going to have a lot of artifacts on the board. We're going to need some level of protection, especially when we're dumping our hands of all of these mana rocks and our vulnerable planeswalker. Soul of Nufrexia is a great inclusion. But we're not talking about 6 drops here. We have lots and lots of mana. We need the biggest drops that we can. So let's talk about Blightsteel Colossus, a 12 CMC 11/11 trampling, infecting, indestructible powerhouse. And that's really the best when it comes to big artifact beaters. I mean, we've got Darksteel Colossus, but it's just not as strong as the Blightsteel. Myr Battlesphere's solid inclusion because of all the Myrs that come with it. Pentavis is a big flying dude that can be super flexible. Another flying angel, Platinum Angel. I mean, it's nice to not lose the game, but you know, you need to be able to protect it too. Another big card is Metalwork Colossus, but it doesn't actually cost 11. It ends up costing a lot less. Same thing with Ancient Stone Idol. We end up being attacked a little bit, and suddenly it's way less mana than we think. Same thing goes for Mycosynth Golem. It's not 11 mana, it ends up being far, far less. So really the only big double-digit beater that I'm interested in is Blightsteel Colossus. It feels like that's just not enough. I need bigger. I need things that are more exciting, which means that we're going to have to leave the realm of artifacts. This is that tension that I'm talking about. And I actually think it's best explained by a single card, Inspiring Statuary. 3 colorless mana for an artifact. Non-artifact spells you have Improvise. This is a very powerful mana rock, but it's honestly got me thinking when it came out. I was wondering what the ratio to artifacts to non-artifacts we would have. Because you'd think about something you might want, like a Myr Battlesphere, because you're like, oh my gosh, I can tap all of those Myr and the Battlesphere to cast something crazy, and the Statuary, that's a huge mana increase, except I can't use the Statuary and other mana rocks to cast that Battlesphere. So there's this tension between artifacts that you need to cast stuff, and non-artifacts is where you're sinking your mana into. And I think that Saheeli in this deck has that tension as well. You need lots and lots of mana rocks, but the biggest spells that you want to cast aren't all Blightsteel Colossus. Yeah, sure, I'll include them in here, but that's about it. What I really want to be casting is things that are more impactful. So let's take a look at some Eldrazi. These are not artifacts, but they are cast very easily with Saheeli and all this ramp. Embercruel, the Palmist End, It That Betrays, Void Winnower, all of these have huge converted mana costs and make a huge impact on the board. These are truly frightening monsters, and we can include all of them. Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, Ulamog the Infinite Gyre, Kozilek 2, Butcher of Truth, and the Great Distortion, although the Great Distortion we will have to pay for that diamond mana, that colorless specific mana. We can't just reduce that casting cost with Saheeli. So maybe we'll leave out the Great Distortion if it's hard for us to get that colorless mana. Oh wait, we have so many mana rocks, it'll be super easy to get that colorless mana. And so I think we have to, with all of these great cards, move away from all artifacts and really go for really, really big Eldrazi. This does open up a few more options, things like Eldrazi Temple, Eye of Ugin, Sanctum of Ugin, Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. All of these are really fantastic support cards for an Eldrazi strategy. But it's not just Eldrazi, that's the thing. We can be casting cards like Karn Liberated and Ugin the Spirit Dragon really, really quickly. And Ugin has to be in this deck because it's so powerful. This -X, exile each permanent with converted mana cost X or less that's 1 or more colors. Yeah, we have so much artifact ramp, so many colorless spells that really Ugin's gonna be a one-sided exile board wipe. And that has me thinking of All Is Dust as well. It's an incredibly powerful synergy even if it does wipe away our own Saheeli. And why are we limiting ourselves to these Eldrazi? What about all of these amazing sorceries? Expropriate. It's insane, it wins games, and you will often cast it for blue on turn 5. Easily in this deck. That is game breaking. How about a card like Time Stretch? 10 mana? Easy. You're casting this for just blue so quickly. And let's not forget about X spells. Jhoira's Immolating Inferno. You can pump so much mana into this. And I'm not really worried about this being a legendary sorcery because I want to cast this with Saheeli on the battlefield. And then draw effects like Stroke of Genius. You can pump all of Saheeli's mana into this, and then you will be drawing an insane number of cards. So it's actually not just all about big artifacts, not about big Eldrazi or any other creature type. We need a collection of amazing cards, and that's going to make this deck play much better than just fixating on one type of spell. Now, thinking about X spells, I do want to go back to artifacts because they are going to be the core of this deck, the bread and butter, which is why I like cards like Whir of Invention and Reshape. They get the exact artifacts we need right on the battlefield, and that can give us some of the toolbox effects we were talking about when we mentioned the Meteor Golem and the Duplicant. And of course, if we have tons of mana to sink into these X sorceries, then why don't we pump that same mana into a card like Hangerback Walker or Walking Ballista? Oh yeah, we're going to be producing insane amounts of mana, and then suddenly we're going to have a Hangerback Walker that is impossible to deal with. And then what happens when the Hangerback Walker dies is we get so many Thopters, and then we have that much more mana the turn after. It's going to be an incredibly resilient effect. Now, I think that was the super fun part, just talking about all of the big stuff that we could put together. But we need to also think about resiliency in this deck. We can easily be blown out by a Shatterstorm effect or a Vandal Blast that destroys all of our artifacts. It can be harder to play these huge spells if Saheeli keeps getting answered. So I'm looking for ways to cheat things into play. Saheeli's directive is straight out of the precon, it's amazing. Reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put any number of artifact cards with converted mana costs X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then put all cards revealed this way that weren't put onto the battlefield into your graveyard. Genesis Wave for artifacts. With Improvise, an easier way to cast, and with a commander that reduces the casting cost of this crazy spell, yes, I'm all in, except for the biggest things that I want to hit, I was just talking about, are like X sorceries, our Hangerback Walker and Walking Ballista, which don't work with this, our Planeswalkers, our Eldrazi. So number one, we could just be happy with Saheeli's directive, or we can push more in the direction of artifacts. That's something we can totally do. Let's go in the other direction, another card called Indomitable Creativity. X red for a sorcery, destroy X target artifacts and or creatures for each permanent destroyed this way. Its controller reveals the cards from the top of his or her library until an artifact or creature card is revealed, and exiles that card. Those players may put the exiled cards onto the battlefield, then shuffle their libraries. So this works way better as you cash in mana rocks and hopefully hit Eldrazi. I mean, odds are you're going to hit more mana rocks too. But come on, I'll have servos and Thopters to cash in. And if I can put out an Eldrazi or two, this card ends up being insane. And I can pump so much mana into X. Both of these are powerful effects, and they can see which two directions this deck is being pulled into, so don't get trapped in between the two. Next up, we have huge spells like Omniscience and Apex of Power. I prefer Omniscience. We'll just play it for blue off of our Saheeli, and then we don't have to worry about casting things anymore. We can just, do it for free is all. And then also I think this could be a great deck for a Sneak Attack package. Sneak Attack is an amazing enchantment. For red, put target creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. That creature gains haste. Sacrifice that creature at the beginning of the next end step. With Eldrazi or huge creatures, they can just keep running themselves into your opponent, annihilating them. It's a really powerful effect. But I think I'm leaning towards Show and Tell. It's risky, but it's also awesome. Show and Tell's amazing in Legacy, where you put an Emrakul the Eon's Torn into play, and your opponent drops a Delver of Secrets onto the battlefield. In Commander, this can be very dangerous, but I very much like it, and I think you have the deck that's built around it. Throw your Omniscience into play, get tons of value, put a huge Eldrazi into play, and just cross your fingers and hope they don't have something better. I think it's the perfect card for this deck. And finally, let's talk about that ultimate. For each artifact you control, create a token that's a copy of it. Those tokens gain haste. Exile those tokens at the beginning of the next end step. Copying every artifact you have is very good. It's especially good if you have lots and lots of artifacts. If your main powerhouse cards are Instants, Sorceries, Eldrazi, then I don't know if Saheeli's ultimate is very good. But there are ways to abuse it. Deep Glow Skate. It just enters the battlefield and suddenly you can ultimate Saheeli. That's pretty powerful. Contagion Clasp and other proliferate effects are also really strong in blue and in artifacts, so there are ways to move Saheeli up to her ultimate pretty easily. And so if you find yourself wanting to lean towards having this ultimate really matter, you can make some small changes. A card like Commander Sphere is a pretty easy switch, because you can just easily sacrifice the token that's created to draw yourself a card. That's good value for a really easy swap. Same thing goes with cards that have strong enter the battlefield effects like Mirror Battlesphere. You'd play Mirror Battlesphere anyways, you just make sure it's in your deck now because you want to synergize with Saheeli's ultimate. But think about other cards that have great enter the battlefield effects, like Combustible Gearhulk, or that Meteor Golem I love so much. And finally, copy effects are very strong, particularly Phyrexian Metamorph, because it can copy something, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. So suddenly the thing that you copied can be copied again by Saheeli's ultimate. But there's one more thing that Saheeli's ultimate can do. I want to introduce you to the Synergies with Microsoft Lattice. Of course it's Microsoft Lattice, it is so broken. So Microsoft Lattice is 6 mana, it basically makes all permanents artifacts in addition to their other types. So let's imagine this scenario. We have Saheeli the Gifted on the battlefield, you play a Deep Glow Skate in order to double the amount of loyalty counters on it, and suddenly Saheeli is ready to ultimate. Except for because of the Microsoft Lattice, both of them are artifacts. So once you ultimate that Saheeli, it will make a copy of herself and that Deep Glow Skate. Immediately, there's a legendary rule, you have to get rid of the old Saheeli. That's fine, it's the old Saheeli, who cares? The new Saheeli comes on the battlefield and that Deep Glow Skate says, hold on a second, let me double the number of counters on any permanent here. I'm going to choose Saheeli. Well, that sounds familiar, because now Saheeli gets to ultimate again, and you get to do this process over and over and over again, and all of these things have haste. Winning from here is pretty easy because you'll have infinite copies of, well, everything, because everything's going to be an artifact, including all of your sweet lands, all of your mana rocks, all of everything. It's going to be crazy. But ultimately everything has haste, so infinite Deep Glow Skates coming at your opponents, yeah, that's just an amazing 3-card combo that wins you the game. So what do I think of this precon? What do I think of Saheeli the Gifted? I like this precon a lot. I think Tawnos and Brutaclad are very interesting, and I think Saheeli, although not as interesting as the other two, because all it is a mana ramp in your command zone, is really powerful and gives us an interesting tension. We want artifacts, but we also want really big non-artifact spells to go off with Saheeli. The ultimate is interesting, but again, sometimes you need a little bit of work to make it game-ending. To be honest, I'm just thrilled to have a wealth of options when it comes to Izzet Artifacts commanders. I want to thank all of you for watching, and I also want to thank TCGplayer.com because they sponsor the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel. Click on the link in the description so that you can get singles from Commander 2018. I also want to thank all of my patrons. You guys are wonderful. I know I say this every video, but can I change the words that I say so I can convey how much I care about you? Probably, I'll think of it. I'll come up with like a haiku or something to demonstrate my love for my patrons. Thank you, patrons. Thank you once more for watching. If you like this and want to see more, consider subscribing. Also, do you know what you should do is try to say hi to me at Grand Prix Los Angeles. That's coming up in days, mere days. So I really hope to see some of you there, or follow me on Twitter so that you can find out where I'm going to be in the convention center. And there will be more Commander 2018. Bye.